doing one more demonstration where we use color to help imply distance and depth. I have a small sketch here on this Fabriano Medievalis paper. This is cotton rag paper, but not necessarily watercolor paper. And I'm gonna be painting with a variety of watercolor brands that I happen to really, really like. So let's go ahead and dive right in. I have 2 other videos here on this channel that actually talk about this in depth. This is just sort of to tie everything together. So if you're interested in the topic, but you're a little unfamiliar with what we're gonna be covering today, fear not, I've got you covered. So I am painting kind of a mountain scene, something just really simple for this kind of technique. And I kind of want to do washes, but I think based on the colors I picked, washes will probably not work, but we're basically doing distance. So we've got some foothills, we've got some back hills, we've got some mountains, and then we've got our sky. And I'm gonna go ahead and do the sky in kind of a light blue, I think. Maybe a light blue that gets darker later on. So we've got some warm blues going on, and hopefully that won't cause too many problems with the colors I'm trying to build up here. So I'm going to start by doing a little wet wash. And I'm going to start with this nice sort of sky blue from my core palette. And I'm going to do a little bit of ultramarine at the top. And then tilt it up a bit so we get a nice fade once I've finished applying our ultramarine. Gonna be getting our Purple Mountains Majesty on with this little mini illustration. All right, so I'm gonna give this a chance to dry. All right, so our sky is cool but fairly dry to the touch. So let's see, how do I wanna do this? I think I'm gonna start with the foreground, and I'm gonna do a really nice kind of light green. It's a very yellow green. And I'm just gonna do this as a fill, just for demonstration purposes. All right, so these are our foreground foothills. All right, so next I'm gonna do what is apparently my favorite, phthalo blue, which is a nice, cool blue that will be kind of a good intermediary between our purple, which will be the background mountains. Oh, I should have gone a lot lighter than this. Let's see if I can't kind of. So another thing we want to do is we want to reduce our intensity as we go back in the distance. And that would be atmospheric perspective, and that's something that, say, Chinese watercolors really make good use of. So even if, let's say, you're not super hot on using like perspective grids, you're not really comfortable with that, that's okay. You can use atmospheric perspective. I'm still trying to get these blues a little bit lighter. You can use atmospheric perspective to kind of help push distance in what you're painting. So basically, background objects are less tonally intense than foreground objects. So this blue should have been a dark blue, but it should have been applied lightly. But hopefully this will kind of lighten up as it dries. So we have brighter colors in the foreground, darker colors in the background. I'm going to go ahead and do a second layer with the phthalo blue. And I know they look like strange colored clouds. I don't really care about that. I hope I am at least conveying what I'm trying to convey. So I added another layer of green to the front to kind of bump up the saturation there, since I added that additional layer of phthalo blue. So now I'm gonna use nice purple. I'm trying to water it down a lot, because really what you want, and I may have to pull out another piece of watercolor paper to show what I'm talking about, but really what you want is for the background to be the lightest. But throughout this piece, we've moved kind of progressively from yellow with the green to purple. So I will demonstrate again really quick, because I feel like I kind of lost myself there. And I'll do it kind of cheap too. All right, so we've got a gradient of our blue sky. I'm going to let that dry. Let's do this with a little bit more realism this time. We're going to select our colors based on reference rather than on imagination. So we are still going from sort of desaturated to saturated in the foreground. So we're also going to go from sort of pale to dark or full saturation. We also need to kind of build up color as we go. So I'm kind of starting with a sap green as kind of my base color. I'm going to do a desaturated sap green mixed with a little bit of alizarin crimson. Just sort of sketching it in there. And give that a little bit of time to dry. All right, while this is still a little bit wet, I'm gonna go in and brush in a little bit of our sort of foreground sap green. You can get a little bit of wet into wet blending. And then I'm also going to mix some yellow ochre with sap green. Kind of brush that into the foreground. I'm going to let all three of those dry. So even though this was somewhat sloppily done, you can already start to see that there's some distance taking place. And I'll zoom in for you guys so you guys can see it a little bit better. I'm just going to kind of continue working it a little bit. And since these mountains look a little naked without any kind of foliage, I'm just gonna kind of doodle on some greenery. So that about wraps up this demonstration on using color and color saturation to imply distance, to imply depth, to imply sort of atmospheric perspective. I hope this was helpful, useful, and informative for you guys. The more we paint from reference, the better we can get. This was just something that I'd knocked up to demonstrate the theory, but this one, which was done from reference, turned out so much better, and I feel like I learned so much more from the second one. So I encourage you guys to try this out yourselves. Google Images is your friend. Find something that inspires you and get to painting. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. I hope to see you guys again really soon. If you enjoy my watercolor tutorials, stick around. I've got more coming. And make sure you head on over to natosoup.blogspot.com and check out my Watercolor Basics series. I take you from the beginning when you're selecting your paints, your brushes, your papers, all the way through to a finished comic page to help you guys learn how to use watercolor for comics and for illustration. So hopefully I'll see you guys again really soon. Bye guys!